All right. Well, I'll talk about myself very quickly. I might hit the highlights there. So I'm a former player. I've been coaching actually for quite a while. I started when I was 15 and did a lot of hockey school. And then as my playing career went on, and then I got back into coaching with my kids. This talk is going to be based on the season plan that I put together for the Bow Valley Timberwolves Pee Wee or U13 AA program, which I coached for 4 years. And then other things, just want to highlight, I'm very fortunate, it was recognized as the 2018 Hockey Alberta Coach of the Year and earned some accolades with True Hockey, being a coach ambassador with them. And as Mike mentioned, my job here is now with player development with the Canmore Eagles in the AJHL. This will be my 4th season. So that's my background. I got my email there. If anyone wants to write down and contact me, I'd love to hear some feedback afterwards, and we'll definitely hit some questions. So let's go on with the talk. So these guys right here, this is one of the Timberwolves teams, and I'm really happy, like I said, that 2 of the coaches in this picture are actually at this talk. So thanks, Dwayne, and thanks, Alec, for coming. But this is the context for what I'm going to be talking about today. I was trying to think about, from a seasonal plan, expecting most of you to be minor hockey coaches. Pee Wee's kind of, or U13 is right in the middle. And my hope is that you can take from what I'm talking about today and, either progress it to higher levels or regress it to whatever level that you're coaching. I thought this was kind of a nice little middle ground. And I had such a great time coaching these kids and at this age group. It's just such an awesome group of kids that we got to play with and coach. And I just want to kind of, toot the horn of this group of kids, not just this team, but all the 05 to 08 players that I was able to coach and with my coaching team during the 4 seasons there. It's actually, I was going through this process yesterday and looking through the players that I coached, and I looked at this picture and it really hit me that, there's a number of players in this picture that are playing or have been drafted to the Western Hockey League. There's a number of players here that are playing Junior B. There's a couple players here that are have NCAA scholarships. There's a player here who played with the Indigenous National Games. We've got a couple of refs in here, and we've got 2 of the coaches that I got to mentor during this process are now running their own teams in Junior B. And Alec Miller, who's on this talk here in that picture, he's the head coach of U15 AAA. And I also say I'm really proud that all of these kids in this team, this is 06 and 07 age group, all of them are continuing to play, which is a really big thing. So during that 4 seasons, I can brag a little bit to say that, overall in those 4 seasons, 3 players ended up in Junior B, 5 are currently playing in the AJHL. 17 of those players over 4 years have been drafted to the Western Hockey League. 2 have NCAA commitments. And 1 played on their national team in the Helenka Gretzky Cup this past summer. So pretty amazing, I thought, for those 4 years. And not that I'm saying the season plan maybe had anything, or it was the lone result, but I think it just showed that the organization of us as coaches, probably influenced these kids to a certain degree, and the rest of it was their talent and their drive that got them there. But it's a pretty special group, an organization that we were part of for those 4 years. So let's get into the heart of it. Mike may have sent you so to send off 2 files. One of them is going to be this sample season plan that you see in front of you. And the other one's going to be a worksheet that you can go through. If you had not received that, there is a QR code here that if you take a picture of it, you can access those files, and they're both Excel files. So that's the season plan, and then here's the worksheet that I want you guys to if you have it available or afterwards, you can use it. And this is an Excel form that you can go through. Hey, just a question, Mike, as I move on. Are you guys able to see? Is there a big thing right in the middle of the screen that says this meeting is being recorded? Is that blocking people's view? Can you see that, or is that just my screen?
It might be just yours. Do you want me to take it down? Because it's not on mine.
No, it's okay as long as people can see everything. Okay, so those are the 2 things I want you guys to take away. Those are the resources for my talk. And then let's get down to why. So why develop a season plan? We're all busy, we all have real jobs, and as a volunteer, do we need to put more work into it? I think it really makes a big difference personally. I think first off, it provides a direction. Where are we heading? The hardest thing I think as a coach is to create your practice plans, and sometimes we're rushed at work or things are tough at home, and it's kind of in the car ride there. You're trying to think through, what am I going to do? When you have a season plan, you know where you're going, you know where you've been, and you've got a sense of where what direction you want to head with the team. With that is, I talk about scaffolding a lot in development, and the season plan creates a framework for your growth. You have core things that you start with, and then you're going to build and build and build. And the hope is at the end of the year, you've created somewhat of a structure, and you can compete in the playoffs. It also allows you to organize your development, not only your on-ice development, but also looking at your off-ice, your mental developments, or your sports psychology type pieces to it, your meetings, organizing your development of a number of practices or games or tournaments that you want to do. And it provides some predictability for the coaches, players, and parents. So if you present this to your coaching group at the start of the year, this is my plan, or you present it to the parent meeting at the start of the year, they know what's going to happen throughout the year. So if the parents are saying to you at one point, they're like, how come we haven't practiced the power play? Are we going to practice the power play or whatever? And you're like, don't worry, like we're building to that. We need to work on passing. We need to work on supporting. We need to work on shooting before we can even start contemplating special teams. So if you present it at the start, they have a good predictability. And what that leads to is the coaches being held accountable. So if you tell them that you're going to be doing this, and you set this out at the start, and you show the parents, this is my season plan, it holds you accountable. Doesn't mean that that you can't change or pull an audible, but it holds you accountable. So there's some huge value. And then from a year-to-year progression standpoint, I think it's incredibly important. Coaching U13 AA for 4 years, it allowed me to adjust from year to year how we're doing, but it also helps if you're coaching the same group, same age group, and you move on from U11 to U13 to U15 and so on. You don't have to spend the time doing the same things over and over again, and you can progress much quicker to help them kind of realize their potential. So before you start putting pen to paper on your plan, I think it's really important, this doesn't get talked about enough, is this contemplation phase. And I think this is important for all coaches. I do it as a yearly kind of practice of trying to really evaluate, what is my coaching philosophy? And this depends on a little bit of self-reflection. So the first thing I typically will suggest is reevaluating, what are your coaching beliefs? So what do you believe to be important? What do you want to, send to your players, and what messages do you want to give to your players? And then what do you believe is important from a development standpoint, from an experience standpoint? And reevaluating those every year, I think, is really important, as is, just truly identifying what is important to you. It might be the team, what is important to the team, but also what is important to you. What do you want to get out of this experience this year? I think it's also really important also to identify what your strengths and weaknesses are. This is I think a really good one. For myself, coaching in being assistant coach in the AJHL, I've had the fortune to be the head coach for 17 games, and I could tell you that it was a really tough experience for me. My strengths lie in teaching and development. I love practices. I love being in games and teaching. It's challenging for me to run a junior A bench with line matching and fast pace of the game. That was really hard. And then another big weakness I have is teaching goaltenders. So I'm very honest with myself. I know what I'm weak at, and I like to surround myself with people that help my coaching team. So again, I'll bring up Alec Miller, who's here on this talk. Alec and I have coached together a number of years, and continue to be helping each other out, and mentoring and so on. And Alec was always an incredible coach for me, because he was a goaltender and was able to teach our goaltenders and develop some really strong goaltenders at the Pee Wee level. And then, what are your personal goals for the year? Kind of plays along with what's important to you. What's also important with the contemplation phase is also establishing your mission. So I find that the coaching philosophy is something that's static. It's relatively static from year to year. You're not going to like really pull a 180 on your coaching philosophy from year to year. However, depending on what level you're coaching, what the skill set is of your players, what the experience is, and so on, your mission may change from year to year. So by team mission, what I mean is kind of like what is this mission statement? What are the values of the team? So we talk about team identity. What do they want to be known as? What's really important to that team? And then the core values are similar kind of concepts. I always kind of think of it as the team identity is what other teams see, and the core values is what comes from intrinsically from the team. And there's lots of different ways to develop those. I think over the years, the best way that we've done this is through team building and having the players, I'll usually create the mission statement or the team identity, but using the players to determine the core values. Things like, a hardworking team, relentless, let them come up with the names, the numbers. We had, fast, hard to play against, strong, loud, those types of things. And then the core values are something that we anchor on every year, every game. It would be known. They'd be up in our room. Lots of people do different things. One of the best things we did in Pee Wee was we started the year with this rock, and as a team builder, the team carried it up this mountain in Canmore. As we go up the mountain, we had periods of time where we talk about values and importance, and we talked about what we call the pillars of the program. And the kids came up with the pillars. We wrote it on the rock. We carried the rock down. It symbolized everyone has to carry the rock a certain piece because it's hard if one person carries it up the mountain. And it was a great team builder, but also established what were values. And we kept that as a tradition with the Pee Wees, with the Timberwolves. So that I think is, a really important thing. And that rock would be carried to practice and games all the time, just to remind them what it was all about. What also is important with your team mission is establishing expectations. And that's from expectations of the coaches, the players, and the parents. So in your coaches meeting at the start of the year, it's really important to set up what you expect. If you're the head coach, what do you expect of your assistant coaches? What are their roles in practice and games, and set them up for some success of what you want them to do. And same thing with the players and the parents. What are the expectations in the dressing room? What are the practice habits? What are the game routines? And then the parents, how do we act in the arena? Reminding them that you're representing the organization, and things like expectations of conflict resolution. And last thing here in the contemplation phase is building your coaching team. And so what the formula I've always done is I like to find personalities that align with my philosophy. So people that have that same vision of what you have, what it means to be a coach and to be a teacher. Like I mentioned earlier, complementing your lack of skill in a certain area with someone who is skilled in that area is very important. So like I said, my example of a goalie, Alec coming in as my goalie coach, an assistant coach with goalie skills, I should say, and complementing where I was limited. And then also surrounding yourself with people who challenge you. I think that's really important. I played a role 1 year as a coach mentor, as an assistant coach, as a coach mentor to the head coach. And I think that's a really good one. Or surrounding them with people that you trust, that that will question you and help you develop. And I think that's a really important piece. That one of the messages I'm going to get out of this is your season plan does include how can you develop as a coach as well. All right, so now we're ready. Now we're into the planning phase here. So this is when we start putting pen to paper. So the season plan worksheet that I gave you guys here, this is what it looks like. You can use it and enter it in. If you're old school and want to put pen and paper, that's fine. If you want to type things in, that's great. What you'll notice is at the top on the horizontal axis is I just have it by month. There's some season plans that'll go by different phases. Months are easy for me to organize and see. That's just the model I did. And then what you'll notice on the vertical axis are various categories that will fit into your seasonal plan. I think I really want to emphasize to everyone that In my goal of trying to make a comprehensive plan, this is about, I'm trying to expand out as many things as I possibly can think of that would go into your planning process. So if you look at this and you're like, you know what, there's no way I would touch some of those, that's great. I don't blame you. There's some things that are redundant. There's some things that are perhaps don't apply to your team. But again, I'm just trying to be as comprehensive as possible in it. So let's break those vertical categories down. So essentially what I have on the vertical column are team goals, schedule, on-ice curriculum, off-ice curriculum, and meetings. Those are kind of the broad categories that I put into this seasonal plan. And as you'll see here on the busy slide here with all this is the sample, those broad categories, you'll see the progression throughout the year. And why don't we just get right into it, and we'll break down each of those little sections, and you can kind of see what my thought process is with these. And again, I'm not trying to dictate what you should do. I'm trying to inspire you to to make your own and use what we've developed here as perhaps a template to how you want to develop your own. So I'm not touting that this is right or wrong. I don't think there's any right or wrong with this. All right, so team goals. So this is the kind of the purest little piece of your season plan, is breaking your months up into different phases. And I've gone through different iterations over those 10 years in minor hockey of developing different phases. I initially started out with doing a very focused skills base at the start, and then as a younger age group, and then I would add some concepts, or people want to use the term systems later on. I find it's actually better the reverse. So the phases I would suggest, and this is what I put in here, is an introductory phase, which includes your evaluation and your first couple practices. And the really important piece here is building your unity, establishing your team culture, lots of team building, and building relationships right off the bat, so people start having some fun together and trusting each other. My next two phases are team development 1 and 2. You could call it team development for 2 months. And what we're trying to do there is establish our style of play, teach the kids the important concepts of playing as a team and the important habits of playing as a team, and get into some tactical stuff. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, define that. And then we progress into skill development. And the thought with the skill development is to teach the skills that you can drop into your team concepts. So we're not creating individuals here. We're complementing the team play by teaching individual skills that will complement what we do as a team. And then the peak phase at the end, because for us in those years, our goal was to do good things in the playoffs. So we would do fine tuning and then playoff preparatory at the end. So you see the team goals are very consistent with the phases that we were doing there. And the goals is just, you can use it as a teaching point. Maybe it's something you talk about before practice, at the first practice of the month. Is it, okay, guys, now we're transitioning to team development 2. We're going to work on developing our tactical skill here. Or this month's all about individual skills, guys. Let's keep working on it. Okay, so next phase the next categories is the schedule. Now this is somewhat set by your association with regards to the number of practices you're able to have, and set by your league with regards to the number of games you play. You guys have some control, I think, over the tournaments that you're in, or the number of tournaments at least. The things I want to, there's nothing really too fancy about this. In the games, I just write down the number of games we have that month, and then practices, the number of practices we have that month. What I do want to highlight, though, is a couple little things that I put in as a progression throughout the year. So with regards to games, you'll see in October in the team development 1 phase, I have 6 to 8 games, and we're going to mix the lines. We're searching for chemistry. So I've created a goal for us in the games of what we're going to be doing with the lines. And one of my pet peeves growing up, or what I see when I was coaching hockey, is teams that would, or I hear stories of teams that would say, my son played with Jimmy and Johnny and the whole year, and he was center the whole time, and never had never played wing. He never mixed the lines up. And I think it's a real detriment to the kids to not let them experiment with different positions. I was, like, even at a young age, well, especially at a young age, I should say, and even up to Pee Wee here, we had really encouraging players to play on off wings. One of the systems that we run in Canmore is to put our left wings on the right side just to help with our breakouts, in the style of way that we like to break out. But changing sides, it opens up a different view. You see things from a different way. And I would, there's often many games that we had that year where we're putting D on forward, forward on D. The kids love it. It's great for development. And even I could tell you a story about one player who was in that picture who told me in his second, he made Pee Wee his second year, PWA second year, and he told me that he had never played center. He was a 13-year-old boy who played the game since he was 5 and had never played center in organized hockey. So I think it's really important to start the year, mix the lines, put them all over, put them in a blender. As the year goes on, you'll see here that I was, identifying for chemistry. So what I typically would do of forwards is I look at 2 players that seem to complement each other or played well together. D pairings are a little bit easier to do as well, and then you start testing the pairings and see how they do. And then I don't think during those years I ever had players play on the same line for more than 2 weeks, and I think that's a really good thing. And then as the playoffs come in, you start seeing some chemistry. I would lock in the pairings. I don't want to say I wrote in lock in the lines. I didn't mean that. It's not like we have first, second, and third line. It was equal lines. There's no like first or second. We rotated everybody every game and all that, but you would lock in some pairings together, and so you're kind of, again, it fits with that peaking phase at the end of the year. And then other things to identify here on the practices, we had a couple of things that we'd throw in for fun, and it was kind of a tradition in the Timberwolves to have, a 3-on-3 intra-squad tournament in one of our practices just before Halloween. We called that the Halloween Howl. It's a great time. We'd have 4 teams, one of which was the coaching staff, and each team would dress up and we have a 3-on-3, and then we do something similar at Christmas with a skills competition. And then at the end of the year, we would get a couple extra practices and work on body contact and checking clinics to prepare these kids for their U15 transition into hitting. Okay, so this is the meat of the big part that people always talk about is developing your on ice curriculum. And I think when people think of season plans, they often just really focus on this piece. It is a big piece, but it's not the whole picture. For me, what I like to do, this goes even from what I'm doing here with the AJHL team, is split things up into technical skills, tactical habits, and team concepts. And technical skills are going to be your traditional technique and skill teaching. The classic things that are, the different skating techniques, forward, backward, edging, stride work, your stick skills with stick handling, passing, skating, passing, shooting, pass reception, deking. And then we got into some advanced skills, things like shooting and stride, one-timers, jab steps, delays, and so on, catching pucks on rims. And so as the year goes on, we would progress those technical skills. And we'd spend time every single practice working on those, because at this age and at all ages, to be honest, our big job as coaches is to teach and help these kids grow with their skill set. Now, tactical habits, people ask me about that. Tactical habits or tactics are something different than skills. I view them as different. They're usually more situational concepts. Or situational skills, I should say. So things like angling, it's often like the positional split stuff. So we'll split D and forward up, and the D will be working on puck retrievals. There's a whole bunch of techniques that go into the puck retrieval, but the retrieval as a concept, as a tactic. We'll do things on how to support the rush, how to transition the puck. Those are some of stick details in the defensive zone are all habits that I like to teach specifically outside of technical skills and concepts or systems. So the last little piece is team concepts. So these are your traditional systems. The reason why I don't use the word systems is I think there's a negative connotation to that. I think systems have traditionally been taught as routes, and hockey is not a route running sport. there's too much chaos and reading and reacting and manipulating that are part of the game. That I'd like to use the term concepts, and concepts are all about supporting and creating predictability to your teammates. So when I teach, an offensive zone, and or say forecheck is a better example. When I'm teaching forecheck, we talk about the concepts of the first player on the puck and what are the habits that they're going to do as they attack and they angle and they take away ice. And then the second person is going to support, and they're going to anticipate where the puck is going, and then the third forward in is, or third player in, is going to protect the important parts of the ice, and also anticipating where it's going rather than running a route. We're focusing on the concepts. One thing that I think you'll see here in this progression throughout the year is that I've got lots of concepts at the start, and then you'll see that we incorporate them into game play very quickly, or November-ish, I guess. And how we're able to do that at the U13 level is, and while not wasting, or not burning a whole bunch of ice time, is knowing how people learn. You can teach systems off ice using the blackboard or the whiteboard. So auditory and visual learning in that concept. You can show them video of good concepts happening on the NHL level or with your team perhaps. But I find that at this age, the auditory and visual is good, but if you can have them learn by feel or kinesthetic learning, or the combination of those three, it's even better. So what we would do is come in on, before practice, an hour before, we would draw up the concept that we want to teach. So again, we'll go back, maybe we'll do defensive zone coverage. And we go outside in a field, I'd bring a football, we'd have a defensive group of 5 lined up around where a defensive zone is on the football field or whatever. And then we'd have an offensive team line up, and we put them stationary in positions that they would normally be in the ice. And then we'd throw the football around on the offensive team as the defensive team is running to the spots where they need to be. So it serves up a number of purposes. Is number one, it's you're learning the concept. Number two, you're outside and you're warming up because you're running. Number three, most importantly, is they're having a ton of fun, and they happen to be learning something because you've got their attention. They're doing kinesthetic, auditory, and visual learning all at the same time. So we would start that, and then as the season progresses, we'd incorporate the concepts into small area games and then into full ice game situations with stopping and so on. So I find that that's a nice way of progressing at this level. As you get older, these concepts are probably a little bit more known. You don't have to maybe do as much of the teaching piece of it, and you can just incorporate right away. And then, as I said at the start, the skills build as the year goes on, and then you're tossing those skills in and combining or blending them with the team concepts that you're teaching on that particular day. So you could teach a tactic on angling, and then you're going to go work on your forecheck. So if maybe some of you are hearing that, you may not have experience with teaching different skills, and you're wondering, how do I learn how to do that? So I just want to, I might be, I'm sure many of you have seen these resources, but I find that these are good resources to go see it at any age group. But Hockey Canada provides a wealth of resources on their website for coaches. They have specific U13 downloads, for our group here. They also have, the app as well that has tons of videos that you can look through, and then also on there they have a U13 pathway that you can go through. USA Hockey does a really good job as well. Similarly, with their coaching website, they have a mobile coach thing online that you can look at. They have age-specific modules you can go through, kind of like PowerPoints and videos you can go through. And they also have an app that's useful. And then also a resource I like to use a lot. It's a little bit higher level learning, and it's not quite as organized for the age group if you want to go that process. But if you're looking to expand your knowledge base and see great coaches like this guy with the blue helmet, Mike McGinnis, teaching on one of their videos, and you can go to one of their conferences as well. I think this is a great resource to look at as well. You can look at, obviously, Instagram and YouTube have tons of videos. The one thing I would caution you with those is There's a lot of skill development people that put out videos, and they don't really tell you the why or the most important things. Like they'll show you the motor skill, but they don't teach you the why or when. And knowing when to do those things is much more important than showing some, repetitive toe drag over and over again, or some wild, hopping over some bench or a table or something. So I would encourage you to use some of these resources here to build up your technical and tactical and concepts within your on ice curriculum. So moving on a little bit quicker here, our off-ice curriculum, the two things that I think are important here at this level and older, it may not be as important younger, is the physical training. So the strength and conditioning piece, the off-ice training, the dry land training. For us, we were very, we were very lucky to have a third party do all the off-ice for us. But before that in U11 or Adam and Novice, we used to do their off-ice program was stick handling with one of us as the coaches. We would do some fun dry land when we could. We would run stairs. And mostly it was just have some fun with movement. Teach them how to stretch, teach them how to warm up, and so on. Our progression throughout the year is basically, you learn how to lift, you learn how to train, learn how to behave in the gym at the start. And we always encourage other sports because athleticism will accelerate everyone's potential and growth. And then as the year goes on, we kind of ease off a little bit as the schedule gets harder into more flexibility, mobility, yoga, that type of thing. The mental training thing is kind of an interesting piece that I think was one of the highlights of our year, or our years with this program. Our schedule is such we had 2 practices a week. One practice beforehand, we would do some of the concept training and teaching. And then the other practice, we would spend 15 to 20 minutes of talking about something that was, perhaps related to the game, but maybe it's mental performance. Maybe it's just about, being a good human being, being a good teammate. So some of the things we would do at the start of the year: dressing room habits, pregame routine, practice habits. And then as we started getting into leadership and, the team wanted to vote for captains and, a player-driven process like that, we would teach them about what does it mean to be a leadership, or at least have a communication with them. We had some really, these were really good, I think, special moments for our team because it brought everyone together. It encouraged our players who were somewhat shy to speak out in front of their group in a safe environment. It led us as coaches to sometimes be vulnerable, talk about some of our failures and things that we've learned over our life from hockey or other sport, or just in life in general. Then there's been some emotional things, talking about gratitude. We'd have players who would get teary-eyed talking about, how thankful they were for their grandfather for coming to all their games. And we just found out he passed away last week. We talked to, again, we get to the heart of some of these kids. You get to know what they're about, and what they get to know what we're about too. And we talk about motivation, inspiration. And then really important skills as you move forward, especially with teaching at the AJHL level, is how do you deal with adversity and bad, like having a bad game, emotional control. And, so those were really important moments, I thought, for our team that if you have the capability of doing these types of little talks, I think they really complement your team. It brings the team together and will help them tremendously as they move forward, even when they're done hockey. Last phase, our last category here is all the meetings. So initially I didn't have these in my season plan my first couple of years, and then I started writing them in because I found that there was important moments during the year where meetings were essential to keep things from going off the rails. Obviously at the start, the player and parent meeting is really important. Team builders right off the bat are super important. I talked about our concept meetings and our mental performance meetings that we did, but we would do things like we go on bus rides for our away games with our team. So that was a really good spot to do individual meetings about what the player wanted to accomplish this year. And it was just something really quick, like, hey, how's it going? You having fun? What are the 3 things you want to get better at this year? And then we'd help them and develop a plan. And then as year goes on, team builders with dinners on the road at tournaments. We go to a WHL game, and then really important placement of parent meetings. I found that was one of the bigger things. Everyone's probably witnessed the grumpy parent that usually comes around at the end of November. And it's usually the honeymoon phase is over, and they thought by that point that their kid would have scored 80 goals by this point, and they haven't. So, I always find that's a good time to have a parent meeting and give everyone a kind of a mid-season synopsis of what's going on, what's our plan moving forward, how are we going to get going here for the next couple months, and then also invite parents to have individual, or players to have individual meetings with the coaching if things aren't going as well. Likewise, I'd like to have another meeting at the end of January, because it's another little low spell of the year. I also like to throw a tournament in around that time to keep the jam up nice and high, keep the juice high. And then, player meetings as we get into playoffs. And then coach development. This is another piece I think is not put on seasonal plans enough, and I think is incredibly important. So many of you have already shown, well, all of you here are showing that you're interested in your development by attending here. So I applaud you. I think a couple key things for coach development is set aside time in your season to develop yourself. So whether that's a coach's site video or conference, whether that's attending one of the Hockey Alberta instructional stream courses, or at this age group, getting your Development 1 course. Take time and allow your assistant coaches and other coaches to do that. I think that's really important for them to bring something back. Don't be afraid to bring in other coaches to provide a different voice. Like, we brought in different coaches to teach checking. We had a shooting clinic one year with a local skills coach, just a different voice, and we get to learn from them too. For me, I meet with my coach mentors 2 or 3 times a year, and I talk with them on the phone a lot more. And just different key times. So start of the year, mid-season, leading to playoffs, and usually at the end of the year. And last thing, I think the most important coaches meeting is at the end of the year, the wrap up. And that's a great time for you to evaluate how the year went, and make plans for hopefully coaching another year after that. So very quickly, we'll go through implementation. The plan starts once you have it written down, is having your coaches meeting and getting feedback from your coaches, getting buy-in from them as well. I think it's really important to incorporate all of them, because you're going to learn something, I guarantee it. And then present your plan at your parent and player meeting. Again, this is going to create some predictability. It's going to show you, it's increase your credibility, and it's going to hold you accountable as the year goes on. And then the execution plan, stick to it. Get it going right off the bat. Stick to your plan, but don't be afraid to reevaluate what you want or what you're seeing is going on throughout the year. That may be a monthly review. I really think it's important to be flexible with your plan. You can write it on paper, but it's kind of like, one of the frustrating things I see in practices is when coaches set, I've got 6 10-minute drills in practice, and I must stick to those 6 drills, even if the kids don't gather, they don't get the concept, they don't realize the objective of the drill, and you see coaches just rush the drill and then move on to the next one. I would rather see people stop after 5 minutes, bring the kids back in, talk about it, find another way to teach it, or adjust your drill to teach the concept, and then go over into the next drill. Spend another 10 or 15 minutes to get that drill if that concept's really important. Same thing applies to your plan. If you really wanted to focus on power play and you didn't get to it that month, that's okay. It's totally fine. You're going to move on to it next year. It's better that you teach and make sure people understand the concepts of your progression, rather than just superficially touching on a number of different topics. Build and rebuild the plan. So from year to year or month to month, adjust things. Things come up and you get new ideas, you learn something new, you attend a conference and come up with some great ideas, you can rebuild it. And then, as I mentioned, the year-end review is incredibly important to set yourself up for next year. And to evaluate and be honest with yourself about how good you did with your planning this year. And there's obviously some adjustments, and I would recommend doing that with the coaches for sure. So to wrap things up, if you've paid attention to this point, I really appreciate it. If you can walk away with 5 things, this is the 5 I would suggest: is use the season plan worksheet, and you can use some samples off of what I gave you there. to build your own. It doesn't have to be the same categories. It doesn't have to be the same phases. Use that as a template to build your own that's appropriate to your team and the level of what you're coaching. Use the resources I highlighted there. Build your coaching community and your mentors, and share resources. Adapt the categories to your specific team. We mentioned that. Put the time in advance, because it'll save you a lot of time in the future. All right. So if you know that this month you want to work on, your crossovers, and you want to work on your backward stops, and you want to work on your backhand passes, you look at your season plan, you see those, adapt the drills that you're going to do to allow you to facilitate that teaching. And frequently reevaluate your plan. Be flexible, be moldable, learn from your experience, and you'll find that this is an effective way of leading your team throughout the year. Hopefully, if you follow these things, you guys will have some great success this year, and most importantly, give a great experience to your kids, and let them learn a few things. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time, and invite you to have some questions. If you or rather not say the questions here in this format, just give me an email, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. That's excellent. So open up to questions. Either just go off of mute and ask them, or type something in the chat box. I've got a few if none pop up here. So can you see the questions, Kyle, or you want me to read them?
Yeah, sorry, let me just figure out where I am here. Okay, I got the chat. There we go. All right. Chat. It's good on mine, all good. Thanks for the talk. Well, that's awesome. Thanks for the feedback. Anybody have any questions?
I got just below there's every year when I make a seasonal plan, there's a feeling of, wow, there's so much to do. How do you deal with that? It sounds like overwhelmed a little bit.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think I would actually flip that around and say, I would feel overwhelmed if I didn't have it on paper and I didn't have a structure of what I wanted to do. Because what it ends up doing is you'll compartmentalize the phase that you're in, or the month that you're in, and you can look down that list, and that list of perhaps 50 things that you want to do throughout the year, or 40 things you want to do throughout the year. Now you're looking at 8. And if you have 8 practices, that fits in quite nicely. And also keep in mind that we can't teach everything in 1 year. And maybe you might want to reevaluate how much you're going to teach during that season. And you'll see in that sample, that's a lot of things. That is actually the season plan that we had for the most part. I didn't really change any of the content that we had in our last year. So you can get through it, but I think the organization piece will help alleviate some of that overwhelming sensation.
Yeah, that's excellent. Again, when you go down the rabbit hole of the skill stuff and you're nerdy about it, I'm the same way too. When I look at these, I'm like, where do you draw the line? Because you only have so much time. So that's a great question, and some experience, or somebody that's worked at that level in the past, definitely be able to help out with that. Next one here. Which skill would you focus development on most at the U13 level? Edge work, puck movement, systems, etc.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the team I had, as a AA team. So first off, I would say, at what level is your U13 team at? Well, like I said, there were some very skilled players there. I think 17. I said Western Hockey League drafted kids there. So, I still went back to the basics. I still went back to, my first practice there is stride work, and literally it's old school, just kind of going up and down and up and down, and watching and pulling kids out and adjusting things. And it was really basic. So I'm a big proponent of everything starts from skating first. So I love the edge work. I love the skating piece first. And then as the year went on, we were able to build different things. So Mike and I were just talking about some of this. If I could go back, now, knowing what I know now and coaching at a higher level and seeing, kids that are adjusting into pro and kids that are adjusting into college and kids that are adjusting to major junior now, the biggest skill I think is really important. It should be taught way more is passing and pass reception, backhand, forehand. I think passing should be part of everything, and it's not just passing in static lines. Or flow drills. It's passing within movements, and situations in the game where passing is incredibly important, and whether that's recreating a breakout, recreating a neutral zone transition, or doing an offensive zone entry. The passing and pass reception is the thing that really separates junior leagues right now from the AJHL. I spent some time in the USHL this past weekend and watched and talked to a lot of the college coaches, and I was watching Portland's Western League camp as well recently. And passing is the thing that by far that separates. Everyone has to be a good skater at that level, but passing is a really key thing there too. And the systems, I would say, of the concepts, that's going to depend on how the level of your team. You may have new players to hockey at U13 level, where you got to focus on a lot of skill development to getting them the foundations up first, and just make sure you're having a ton of fun with it. And or you might have a AA team that's undefeated, and you need to challenge them with new concepts. So it's a really good question. It's going to depend on who you're coaching.
That was did you scroll down, Kyle, to that second question? That was the
yeah
concepts.
It's a great. Yeah, I like this question here. So could you show an example of a team concept that you would incorporate as a drill, small area game practice? So this to me is incredibly important. And as you get at the higher levels of coaching, and I wish I would have known this when I was coaching younger ages, we have to get the kids playing in a game situation is more often. The isolated skill work is fine, but we're not teaching kids the why or the when. And we need to jump them into game situations as soon as possible. So a great example, I've used forecheck a number of times here. So a great example of a cross ice, a small area game perhaps, is going to be a 3-on-3. And on every whistle, the puck possession team has to go behind their net. And on that whistle, a new set of 3 comes flying out of the dark jersey line. 3 go flying out. F1 is attacking the puck. F2 is supporting, and F3 is protecting. The white jersey team had to have taken that puck, go behind the net. So they're kind of simulating a breakout. And so that's just like one example. We'll do that game quite a bit. You can do the same thing with practicing a transition. So we'll do a game where we have 2D behind the net, and have a 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 in the middle. On every whistle, you have to on every possession change, you have to take your puck, pass it back to the D go D to D, and then one of the D jumps up, and it's a 3-on-2, you get an advantage. So that's working on your transitional skills. It works on the same concepts of breakout, with a winger kind of coming out to the wall and centerman coming low and slow, and getting a pass from the D under pressure. But I would really, really encourage you to research and incorporate small area games as a game transfer of your concept or your skill. These things don't apply just to concepts or systems. We'll do every practice we do with our junior team. There's 20 to 30 minutes of small area games, because this is so important. And we'll, if you want to look up constraint-based learning, this is the biggest concept about this, is the biggest term about this. And so say you're working on rim pickups. So someone rims a puck around the wall. It's one of the hardest skills to teach, is catching a puck off the rim, and it's not taught enough. So we'll do a 3-on-3 game in zone, where we have a coach on the blue line, coach on the same blue line, and we're just dumping pucks in, rimming a one in on the whistle, and we have to catch it. The 3-on-3 is catch the puck off the wall. Whoever has possession goes and shoot on the net. So there's one rim coming in this way, there's one rim coming in this way after it. So it forces them to, we create a high frequency of the desired moment for them to apply the skill that we taught them earlier in the drill, or in the practice, I should say. So it's an incredible question. I'm glad you brought it up. It's a, I think I'm doing a talk on practice design later on, and I'm going to really hit that hard. But I appreciate that. I think I got Umberto there. Thanks for coming. Umberto's definitely one of the coaches I've leaned on over the years, and really we've worked together, and I consider him one of my mentors. So I appreciate your question. Umberto says, what are your thoughts on including the use of video as a learning teaching tool in seasonal plan? Yeah, I mean, that's next level stuff. I can tell you what I'm doing right now, Umberto, is I have a curriculum of technical skills that I teach at the AJHL level, and I'm using my video library to populate learning points for each of those skills, tactics, and concepts. And every practice that I do with the junior team, we have 10 minutes of pre-ice video where I introduce the concept or the tactic or the skill that we're going to do in that practice, and they get to see it, they get to feel it, we get to talk about it, and their brains start thinking a little bit about it, and then incorporate that into the practice where we bring video on just about every practice. We do individual videoing. I'll pull kids out of drills and go through videos with them. But I think if you can, where I see the video being used for is tagging it to the concepts, tactics, and skills that you want to teach. And then you, like I said, you create this library that you can just pull and shoot and text and send to people. Great question.
I'm just gonna move up. It looks like we skipped one here.
Right.
Or no, I guess that one was sent to the direct. I can't find it now. It must be removed. Okay, we'll skip that one. What drills, exercises do you find best to help kids increase foot speed?
Yeah, everyone that's the big question. I've got two. Well, my 15-year-old is still prepubescent, so both my kids struggled through that as late puberty kids. Everyone wants to see faster foot speed and faster 3 steps of acceleration. There's a number of different things you can do. I think from on ice stuff, I think the edge work, foot speed starts with balance first. You got to have good edge work. You got to have good balance. You could definitely do things in isolation by, starting drills, anything that you want to do, like the old school iron cross is one that, you'll build out. It's good conditioning and you move around. But I think if you can create drills that, encourage crossovers where you can do things quicker, change of direction drills, it really helps that. And then probably the most important thing, especially as you're getting into that 14, 15, 16-year-old, is what they do off the ice. Their plyometrics, their sprint work, their strength training, under proper guidance, I think is probably the biggest thing for foot speed. But I think if you go back to the core foundations of that, edging, balance, posture, are really foundational skills you have to have established first before you get them just whipping around. Because oftentimes, like if you want to pull up some old PK Subban videos of him doing skill work, you'll see a really fast foot speed, but he ain't going anywhere. He's not moving very fast. So sometimes foot speed and effectiveness are two things that aren't in line with each other.
I just got one here. I know if anybody has commitments and want to hop off, feel free. But for those who live for this stuff, feel free to stay on for a chat. Kyle, I don't know what you have for time, but do you got to run or a couple more minutes?
Oh, I'm good. This is great. Yeah, I'd love to talk more.
Okay, so my question is, and I may be guilty of this in the past also, but I hear it a lot. When you ask a coach who hasn't done a seasonal plan before if they have one, the answer 9 times out of 10 is, well, I don't know what kind of players I have, so I can't make a seasonal plan. Can you just talk
Yeah,
about that a little bit?
yeah. No, I think that's a great question, and again, go ask that full kind of guy. Um, I think it goes. I think it's exciting when you have a new team and you don't really know what you're kind of getting into. And I think, having a bit of a framework, like I would still take my sample from U13 and I would go, say I was a head coach for this junior team, I would still take that template and use that. Or if I was going back to, um, a younger level, I would still start with that template, and then very quickly um, reevaluate and adapt it to what I see is going on. Because very early on, you're going to see what you have. It also, a nice way of doing it too is your whole season doesn't have to be organized right off the bat. You can pencil some things in, leave some spaces blank, and then adjust it as you need to. But having that first couple months, I think, is really important. And the foundational things are the foundational things. It's still, you're going to probably start doing some basic skill work right off the bat. You may or may not do systems or concepts right off the bat, and that's perfectly fine. And then as far as deciding your off ice program, that's going to be maybe association and age dependent. And the mental training stuff, I think, is universal. I think that's really good. You just have to adapt it to the age that you're with. But you don't really have to get into you know I mean, really advanced or specific stuff that you may until later on anyway. So I would say start out with a basic idea what you want to do. Don't be afraid to reevaluate where you're at and adjust.
Yeah, and that's been kind of my experience. I think before I spent enough time at a level. I kind of felt like I didn't really know what I should be doing. And then over the last few years here where I've kind of been settled at certain levels and spent time at them, it's like it seems to be the same thing no matter what the team is. I found the same concepts and issues, and the seasonal plan will work just about for the same age and skill level. Like maybe if you had a tier 4 or 5 team, might be different than a AA team. But if I just find at that same level, the same things carry on over and over and over again. Like the seasonal plan that I would have made after watching year 1 is probably almost the same as year 5. And I find that's kind of sometimes where people get a little bit mixed up in it. And I myself, struggled with the same thing. Is I didn't have enough experience at a level
Yeah.
of numerous years back to back to actually feel confident to put something together, just because of lack of experience. And so many of our young coaches are moving on and only spending 2 years at each level and going through over and over and over again. And the scope of work changes every 2 years. So
Yeah, yeah, no, I would 100% agree with you there, and I'd also encourage everyone that reevaluate every year what you're doing, and I think that's really important to get your feedback, get the mentors, spend some time with other teams. Like for example, as mentioned, Alberto. I mean, like that's a type of person that I would feel very comfortable passing along my plan and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about for this thing. What do you think? And I think it's great that we have this community in Alberta of interested coaches that are willing to share and help each other out, and having these forums like this, I think facilitates some accelerated growth for coaches. But no, I think that's really good. The foundations are the foundations, and if people aren't really sure where to start out with, using that Hockey Canada, for example, they have that their U13 core skills. That's a great starting point. Just start with that and just kind of see where it goes. Or excuse me, USA Hockey has something very similar, and whatever works for you, and start with that, and then reevaluate and move from there. And I think the key thing there though is over and over again, I really think it's important to make sure that you master, or at least get the majority of your group with good competency in certain skills before you move on. Don't be in a rush to check, do all these things. If you find that the majority of your team doesn't even get it, like there's no point to that. So I would rather focus on getting some things very, very good, so that that's now a part of their game, than superficially touching a whole bunch. It also, like, I don't want to bring in too much about practice design, but we also have to remember that these are all individual players and their skill assets are completely different. And so, one of the things that we like to do in this, and no surprise, like lots of people do this, is the station based for skill development, and it allows a better one, coach to player ratio. And then you can, like, don't be afraid to um, uh, put players into similar skilled groups. Like, for example, we would do a practice on one timers, for example. And there were some kids that could bomb the puck and had the timing down and great shots. You would take those 2 or 3 and send them down, and then you'd progress those kids into, situations in the game where it was highly complex, and you'd have to use a one-timer in motion, like off a rush or on a flank on a power play. And then there was kids that just, they couldn't even take a slap shot yet. So that's great. So we take them and we put them over there and we start building the foundation blocks. And so you hope that you're challenging all of the players, and that's what I think is probably one of the more complex things of the season plan, is that you can have some concepts you really want to work on, and that there are kids on the team that get it, and you don't want to bore them. You want to continue challenging them. And there's some kids that don't get it yet, and you still have to definitely dedicate some time to build them up. That to me is the harder part of the whole deal. And we'll talk about that with the practice design presentation.
This one I'd like to touch on too. This is really interesting. We actually have a presentation tomorrow night that's gonna go right into this. But how involved are you in the off ice work, dry land, with your team, or do you leave it up to the companies you hire?
Yeah. So early on, I was going to kind of expand on that a little bit during the talk. So early on, I felt that there was a missed opportunity to help build relationships and teach things off ice, and build some athleticism as well. So, you know, we did a lot of basic stuff at the start when the kids were young. It's just movement, it's having fun, it's having games. But very early on, one thing I gave the kids every single year was, like, they all got golf balls, and they would put tape around the golf ball. Like, part of the thing was, you had to create some artistic golf ball that was yours. And so we would do stick handling before every practice, every game. And then we would do some sort of athleticism. Initially the movement patterns were just kind of teaching them how to warm up, and then, as they get older, how to cool down. As you got older, I have to admit, it was really nice to be in an organization like Cochrane Minor Hockey, where they provided us with a third party to provide one workout session a week. For 12, 13-year-olds, sure, I think that's fine, because I wanted all the kids to be doing outside sports as well. I think that's incredibly important. So I would be happy to send them off to the group, but we always had, one of the coaches would arrive early and supervise, especially for the start, until the habits were entertained, and the kids are all paying attention and all that. As you get older, it becomes incredibly important to have the dry land, and it becomes really important to have people who are knowledgeable on how to do it. Even U18 AAA level, I would expect a program to have 3 workouts minimum a week off ice throughout the whole season. I think that's really important. As you get into juniors, it's every day. It's just such an important piece of growing as a hockey player. But so at the start, I would say I used a lot of resources on Hockey Canada and USA Hockey's website, of stuff to do off the ice. Most of it, I think it's really important to have a fun component to everything you do. And off ice is the same thing. Like your off ice training for a 9 or 8 or 7-year-old is go play a game, whatever it is, tag, if it's basketball, if it's soccer, whatever. That's great. But I was always a big fan of stick handling, mainly because I had terrible hands when I played. But I'd like to go through a stick handling routine for the kids before every practice when they were younger, and a lot of them still continued to do that as they got older. So I like that piece.
Still rolling in here, but I don't want to keep you, Kyle.
No, this is great. No, I'm fine.
Okay. Um, you have any tips to get through to a player that doesn't like to pass very often? Andrew, that's question, maybe a little more context. What age and level would that player be at? Just to put it in context for Kyle.
I would, as he kind of fills that info in, what I would say right off the hop is this is obviously a very common thing, and you see it a lot. And there's various. I think trying to find out what the motivation is to not pass. Is it a missing foundational skill where the kid just hasn't learned to stick handle with their head up, so they don't have quite have an idea of is there even someone open. There might be some other external motivation, which you see from time to time. And, Johnny's got to score his 5 goals per game, and that's fine. I keep picking on Johnny, by the way, so I apologize if there's anyone here named Johnny. But, so I think finding the motivation is number one. Do they have the skills to make a pass? Number two, what are the habits that they're missing? And then as they get older, because this isn't a U9, only a U9 problem, because most of the kids at U9 don't pass the puck that often anyway. But this is a big problem as they get older. And there was a player on our team, one of the teams that I coached, he's a very, very good hockey player. And but he got away with doing a lot of things because he was quite skilled. And so he kind of, previously he could have success and go end to end and have no problems. But as soon as I realized that he just wasn't lifting his head, I was worried about, number one, he's going to get his head knocked off in bantam. So I tell this story to a number of people before, but I told him that every single time you see a color on the ice, you skate over a color, you have to lift your head up and look to the middle of the ice. And that's it. That was the constraint I put on him. You got to lift your head up and look to the middle of the ice. So organically, it just kind of helped that as he lifted his head and looks to the middle of the ice, he started seeing his teammates. And he started realizing, well, there's 2 people on me and no one on him. Let's pass it over. And then, so that was the first piece. So his teammates liked him a lot more. And then what he realized was, as soon as the puck goes to the other player, all the pressure goes to that player. And now I get open, I get it back, and the puck's in a better condition with me, and I have a better chance of helping the team to score goals. So it wasn't necessarily a player. He was definitely not a selfish player, just lacked the skill at that time. So I think, fix the foundational problem and, find out what the motivation is to not pass, and then also show them that, it's a team game, so you can play lots of different games where, you have to pass 5 times before you can shoot. Well, the kid has to pass if he wants to score a goal here in this game. So do that, and then show them as they get older, you can show them that you will benefit by passing the puck because it's going to relieve pressure. And now you get open, you find some open ice, you're going to have more time to make plays.
Yeah, it's U13 tier 1 is where this player was at. And this summer, actually, I think I shared it with you, Kyle, that study on the U13 passing. I watched a game, did 2 teams, and the one team had 310 passes with an 80% completion rate. The other team had, I think, about high 60s passes with a 50% completion rate, and it wasn't even close. Like the amount of passes that were put together, strung together by the team with 300, they were putting together sequences of 7 to 10 passes, where the other team, I think throughout the entire game, they only had a sequence that had more. They only had 2 sequences that had more than 2 passes consecutively. And okay, I'm working with a team right now at the U Sport level, and the amount of keep away games and progressive pressure games that are just passing is phenomenal. Even at that level, it's still trying to be taught. So yeah, it's an excellent question. I think so many people are dealing with it right now, and even with the way our world is going with social media and individualism, it's so much harder to teach team play now than it's ever been. And an association putting a premium on it and coaches really buying into that, I think, is the only way to ever get over it from what I've seen. So interesting.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's a great question, and it is I think it's the biggest problem that's in hockey right now. Is unfortunately, as a skills coach, I'm partly to blame. I've changed my ways tremendously. However, I think post COVID, definitely down in the States, where they have people spending thousands and thousands of dollars on their individual skills coaches who teach them only individual skills. Then the kids are very highly skilled athletic kids, but they can't play the game. the game is a 6-person per side game, and the other thing I would encourage that player to do, or the coach to do there, is encourage the kid to sit down and watch a hockey game, whoever their favorite player is, and count the number of passes they make, count the number of times that they go end to end and score a goal. There's not going to be that many. And one of the things we'll talk about in the next talk is translatable skills. So passing and pass reception is a highly translatable skill, meaning it has relevance at the highest levels and at the next level you go to. This U13 level is notorious for early puberty, early development kids who learn how to go coast to coast, north south, dominate with their skills and their incredible shots some of these kids have. I remember one kid that 50 some goals in Pee Wee. They're ripping pucks like he shot harder than I could. And if the coach doesn't help that kid, that player develop through constraints and forcing them to not just go end to end and score goals and win games, they can teach the kid how the game is played at the next level. Unfortunately, that player's never going to go as far as their skill could get them to. So I think empowering these kids to understand that it's a team game, and the skills that you may see at the U13 level that bring success rarely bring success at higher levels. Great question, though.
Yep. Okay, well, we might as well wrap her up here. Thanks again, Kyle, and for everybody that was on. If you haven't done one of these before, Kyle's basically framed your house for you. Now you can pick the shingles and the siding and make any kind of renovations you need from there. So that's excellent. Our next presentation will be October 16th. We're going to have Topher Scott on. Kyle, you know Topher, hey, really well.
Oh yeah. You can't miss this. And Topher is an incredible guy. One of the resources I didn't add is I didn't get into podcasts, but Topher runs the hockey think tank. He's a former player at Cornell. He was an assistant coach at Cornell. He actually coached my older boy in Chicago 2 years ago. He coached at Michigan last year, and he's really making an impact in the game. And I think I love his philosophies. He's dialed in. So great talk.
Yep. And yeah, Kyle will be back November 13th for the practice design. Have a couple between then, but thanks again so much, everybody, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to hop on here. And thanks again, Kyle. Always appreciate our chats and you hopping in to do this. And yeah, we'll see you guys around the rink.
Best of luck to everyone. Thanks for taking the time.